The sun of Virelia shimmered across the sky like liquid gold, casting long shadows over the grand palace. Its towers rose like the spires of some ancient dream, reflecting the light in 1,000 colors. In the central hall, filled with banners and symbols of past rulers, Princess Lyra walked slowly, her soft footsteps echoing across the polished floor. Today was a day unlike any other. Today she had to choose a new father figure. The tradition had existed for centuries on Virelia. The queen's daughter, when she came of age, would select a father figure to guide her through the challenges of leadership. These father figures were not fathers in the human sense. They were mentors, protectors, and symbols of strength. Usually the candidates were aliens of extraordinary skill, intelligence, or power. They were warriors, scholars, and rulers from across the stars, each one more impressive than the last. Lyra's mother, Queen Solara, sat on her throne at the end of the hall. She looked regal as always, her silver hair braided with jewels that sparkled like distant stars. Her violet eyes studied Lyra closely. Today, she said softly but firmly, "You will choose. Look carefully, Lyra. This choice is not about appearances. It is about the heart," Lyra swallowed. The hall was filled with the candidates. They stood tall, each presenting themselves with pride and confidence. Some were covered in iridescent scales, their bodies glinting in the light. Others had long, elegant limbs, and a few bore psychic auras that shimmered around their heads. They were perfect, strong, clever, and frighteningly competent. But Lyra hesitated, and then she saw him. Kyle. He stood at the edge of the hall, slightly apart from the others. He was human, thin and average in every way, dressed in a simple uniform that marked him as an envoy from the distant planet Earth. His brown hair was messy, and his hands twitched nervously at his sides. Compared to the alien candidates, he looked weak. His voice was soft, not commanding. His body was unremarkable, yet something in him drew Lyra's attention. He was not afraid. Lyra's gaze lingered on Kale. The court whispered among themselves. "He cannot be serious," a tall, blue-skinned alien muttered to his neighbor. "A human? Weak and fragile?" The princess must be joking, but Lyra did not laugh. She walked slowly to the center of the hall. Her eyes scanned the candidates one by one. Each alien displayed their strength or skill with elaborate gestures or demonstrations of power. A creature with 6 arms lifted a massive stone effortlessly. Another candidate bent light into sharp blades, slicing the air with precision. A psychic candidate sent a ripple through the hall, and the air seemed to hum with energy. And then there was Kale. He simply stood there. His brown eyes were calm, steady, and intelligent. He looked around the hall and observed, not boasting or showing off. He made no effort to impress anyone. Lyra's heart raced. She could feel a strange certainty building inside her. When her mother spoke again, it was as if the words had been waiting for this exact moment. "Point," Queen Solara said softly. Lyra raised her hand. Slowly, deliberately. Every eye in the hall turned to her. Every alien candidate froze, expecting her to choose one of them, one of the mighty and perfect beings before her. She pointed at Kale. The hall went silent. Even the walls seemed to pause. Kale blinked, uncertain. His lips parted slightly as if he wanted to say something, but he did not. The alien candidates looked shocked. Some gasped. Others simply stared, disbelief written on their faces. Queen Solara's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. "Good choice, Lyra," she said. Her voice echoed through the hall, calm and sure. "Do not be afraid to see beyond what the eyes show. Strength comes in many forms." A murmur ran through the court. "The princess chooses a human?" A voice whispered. "She cannot possibly know what she is doing." But Lyra was not afraid. She knew something that no one else did. Kale was human, yes, but he carried a spark within him. A spark that no alien technology, no psychic power, no physical strength could match. It was the spark of creativity, courage, and unpredictability. Humans had a strange way of facing danger, of thinking in ways no one expected, and Lyra had seen it in Kale already, in the way he had observed the palace and its complex systems during his brief visit. Kale looked at her, nervous but determined. He stepped forward. His movements were careful, not confident, but deliberate. He bowed slightly to the queen and the princess. I will do my best," he said in a steady voice. "You do not need to do your best," Lyra replied. "You need to be yourself." Queen Solara nodded. And that is exactly what we hope for. Lyra has chosen wisely. The candidates were outraged. They exchanged looks filled with disbelief and anger. Some whispered about the humiliation of being passed over by a human. One candidate, a towering creature with crimson armor-like skin, stomped his foot and growled. But Lyra paid them no mind. She felt a thrill of excitement. This choice was not about what the court expected. It was about what was right. Later, in a private chamber, Queen Solara spoke to Lyra in a softer tone. "Many will question your choice," she said. "But you must trust your instincts. Humans, they are underestimated. And sometimes the underestimated are the most dangerous and the most valuable." Lyra nodded. She had always admired her mother's wisdom, but today it was more important than ever. She looked out of the chamber window at the city below. The streets were alive with the colors and lights of Virelia. Ships glided through the sky, and people moved with precision and purpose. It was a world of order, strength, and power. But Kale's presence reminded her that there was another kind of power, quiet and unassuming, waiting to be discovered. Kale spent the rest of the day learning the palace's routines, observing the other candidates and trying to understand his role. He knew he was different and he feared that the court would not accept him. But he also felt a strange sense of destiny, as if being chosen by Lyra was not a coincidence. That night, the palace was calm. Lyra sat in her chambers thinking about the day's events. She remembered Kale's quiet courage, his careful observations, and the way he had smiled nervously when he first realized he had been chosen. There was something human in him, something the aliens could never understand. Strength was not always physical. Power was not always visible. And sometimes the smallest spark could light the greatest fire. Lyra smiled to herself. The real challenge was only beginning. Kale would have to prove himself in ways the court could not yet imagine, but she believed in him. She believed in the human spark, and she knew that together they might accomplish something extraordinary. The morning sun reflected off Virelia's gleaming towers, filling the palace courtyard with a dazzling light. Princess Lyra walked beside Kale as they approached the training grounds, a place where candidates were tested on their strength, intelligence, and ability to lead. The alien candidates had arrived early, already demonstrating their physical and mental skills, each one more impressive than the last. Kyle's eyes widened as he looked around. Massive mechanical constructs moved on their own, shifting obstacles to create ever-changing courses. Pools of liquid crystal reflected alien energy fields, and floating platforms hovered above the ground, controlled by technology beyond anything Kale had seen on Earth. Lyra smiled at him. "Do not be afraid," she said. "You are not here to compete with them the way they expect. You are here to be yourself." Kale nodded, though doubt lingered in his chest. How could he, a human with no strength or psychic abilities, possibly compete against beings that could lift mountains or read minds? The first challenge began. The candidates were asked to lift a massive stone the size of a small building and place it atop a pedestal. The six-armed alien candidate approached confidently, muscles rippling under shiny scales. With little effort, the stone rose into the air and settled perfectly on the pedestal. The other candidates followed, using a combination of strength, energy fields, and telekinesis to succeed. Kale stepped forward, staring at the enormous stone. His hands shook slightly. He could not lift it, not even close. But he remembered something he had learned during his training on Earth. Strength was not always about muscles. Sometimes it was about using tools, understanding leverage, and thinking ahead. Kale looked around and noticed a series of levers and pulleys built into the structure of the pedestal. Carefully, he began to adjust them, calculating angles and tension. His fingers moved quickly but carefully. The stone shifted slightly. Then slowly but surely the stone rose inch by inch until it settled perfectly atop the pedestal. The hall erupted in whispers. Some aliens were shocked. Others simply shook their heads in disbelief. Kale had succeeded. Not by brute force, but by using his mind, his logic, and his ingenuity. Lyra watched with pride. She knew this was only the beginning. The next challenge was mental. The candidates were given a complex puzzle, a holographic maze that shifted and changed as they tried to solve it. Most aliens relied on their psychic abilities, manipulating the maze with thought alone. Kale studied the maze carefully, noting patterns, connections, and possible solutions. While his hands were slower than the psychic candidates' minds, His approach was methodical. Hours passed. Some candidates grew frustrated, their psychic energy waning. Kale persisted, adjusting his strategy with patience. Finally, with a careful sequence of movements and logical deductions, he solved the puzzle. The aliens looked stunned. Kale had no special powers, no advanced technology, only his human brain, perseverance, and attention to detail. Lyra clapped softly. "You see?" she said to the court. "This is what I meant when I chose him. Humans are not weak. They are different, and sometimes different is exactly what is needed." The final test was the most dangerous. A simulated combat scenario was created, one that forced candidates to think, move, and react under pressure. Alien warriors demonstrated incredible speed and strength, striking with precision and power. Kale had no combat training. He could barely lift his own body, let alone engage in battle. But Kale noticed something that the aliens had overlooked. The scenario was predictable. The robotic enemies moved in patterns, relying on strength and repetition. Kale could not overpower them, but he could outthink them, using simple tricks, luring them into traps, redirecting their movements, and using the environment to his advantage. He managed to disable several machines without a single direct confrontation. Lyra watched in amazement. She had never seen anyone use their brain in such a clever way under pressure. Kale's human ingenuity allowed him to succeed where raw power had failed. After the final test, Queen Solara addressed the court. "It is clear," she said, her voice calm and commanding, "that the princess's choice was wise. Strength is not always visible. Power is not always obvious. Kale, this human has shown courage, intelligence, and adaptability that even the strongest aliens could not match." Some members of the court still grumbled. "It is unusual," a tall, armored alien muttered, "but effective." Others nodded reluctantly, beginning to understand that Kale's success was not an accident. Lyra smiled at Kale. "You see, you are more capable than you think." Kale laughed nervously. "I hope I am. I don't want to embarrass myself, or you." "You will not embarrass anyone," Lyra said. "You have already proven yourself. This is only the beginning." Over the next few days, Kale continued to train with the candidates, learning their languages, customs, and technologies. He struggled at first, stumbling over alien tools and misinterpreting gestures, but he persisted. Each mistake became a lesson, each small success a victory. Lyra observed him closely. Every day she saw more evidence of the human spark she admired, the ability to adapt, to find solutions in impossible situations, and to face fear with courage. Kale's persistence and humility inspired those around him, including some of the skeptical alien candidates. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. One evening, as the sun set over Veralia's city, Lyra and Kale walked through the palace gardens. The air was filled with the scent of strange flowers that glowed softly in the fading light. "You are different from them," Lyra said softly. "You see things they cannot. You do things they cannot, and yet, you are human," Kyle smiled. "I am just me." "I suppose that is enough sometimes," Lyra nodded. "It is more than enough. Sometimes the world needs someone who can think differently, someone who can see solutions where others see only obstacles. That is why I chose you." Kyle looked at her surprised. "You really believe that?" "I do," Lyra said firmly. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. The palace's communication systems flashed red and guards ran past them in urgency. A message arrived from the city below. There was a disturbance near the outer districts. A test of loyalty and quick thinking that required immediate attention. Lyra turned to Kyle. "This is your first real challenge outside the palace," she said. "Are you ready?" Kyle nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. "I will do my best." Lyra placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Your best is enough. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. And remember, humans have a way of surprising everyone." As they moved toward the palace gates, Kale felt a strange sense of purpose. For the first time in his life, he realized that being different was not a weakness, it was a strength. On this alien world, far from Earth, he would have to rely on every skill, every bit of courage, and every ounce of ingenuity he possessed. And he knew that with Lyra by his side, he could face whatever challenges awaited them. The palace gates opened, revealing the sprawling city below. Hovering vehicles streaked across the sky, Alien citizens moved with precision and purpose, and distant towers glimmered in the setting sun. The disturbance awaited them, and Kale took a deep breath. He was no longer just a visitor. He was a candidate, a mentor in training, and perhaps, if he succeeded, the first human to earn the trust of an alien civilization in ways they had never imagined. The test of humanity had begun. The calm of Virelia's palace was shattered in the middle of the night by blaring alarms. Red lights pulsed through the corridors, reflecting off polished walls and illuminating the faces of the startled palace guards. Princess Lyra and Kyle were summoned immediately to the control room, where holographic screens displayed a terrifying scene. A fleet of unknown ships had appeared in orbit above Virelia, moving with deadly precision. "They are raiders," a high-ranking officer reported, his tentacles trembling slightly as he pointed at the approaching ships. "They have never been seen in this system. Their technology is unfamiliar. They will strike within minutes." Kale's heart pounded. He had never faced a real battle, let alone one involving alien raiders with unknown weapons. Yet as he looked at the screens, he began to notice patterns, subtle differences in the enemy fleet's formation, slight hesitations in their movements, and recurring behavior he could exploit. Lyra stood beside him, her violet eyes sharp and focused. "Kyle," she said, "and this is it. Your first real test. The palace, the city, and thousands of lives are at stake. What do you see?" Kale pointed at the screens. "Their formation isn't random. Look here, they repeat certain maneuvers every few seconds. If we anticipate their patterns, we can redirect our defenses and minimize damage." The officers exchanged skeptical glances. One of the alien commanders, a massive figure covered in crystalline armor, barked, "And you think a human can teach us strategy? Do you even understand their technology?" Kale swallowed hard but met the commander's gaze. "I don't need to know everything about your ships. I just need to understand their behavior. Predictability is more dangerous than strength, and every pattern can be used against them." Lyra placed a reassuring hand on Kale's shoulder. "Do it," she said firmly. "Trust yourself." "I trust you." For the next few minutes, the control room became a whirlwind of activity. Kale directed ships to adjust their orbits, reorganized defense lines, and suggested where energy shields should be strengthened. The aliens hesitated at first, uncomfortable with taking orders from a human, but slowly they began to follow his instructions. Then the raiders attacked. Energy beams streaked through space, lighting up the darkness like fireworks. Kale's heart raced as he shouted instructions, calling out patterns he had observed and directing the alien fleet to exploit weaknesses. The battle was intense. Ships maneuvered in dizzying formations, explosions lit up the void, and the deafening sound of energy shields being struck filled the control room. Kale's predictions proved accurate. By noticing the repeated movements of the raiders, he was able to direct the fleet to intercept critical ships, avoiding catastrophic damage to the city below. The alien commanders looked on in disbelief as their most experienced pilots executed Kyle's strategies perfectly. "Remarkable," one muttered under his breath. "The human, he is correct." As the battle raged on, Kyle noticed a critical flaw in the raiders' formation. A small group of ships remained isolated at the edge of the attack, vulnerable and exposed. "We can trap them," he shouted. "Lead them into a narrow corridor near the asteroid field. Our ships can surround them there." Lyra nodded and turned to the fleet leaders. "Do as Kale says. Trust him." The maneuver was risky. One wrong move could destroy dozens of ships and kill thousands of civilians. Yet, with precision and courage, the alien fleet followed Kale's plan. The raiders, lured by the apparent weakness, fell into the trap. Within minutes, the isolated ships were surrounded and disabled, their energy drained by the focused attacks of Virelia's fleet. The remaining raiders, seeing their comrades captured, began to retreat. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. Silence fell over the control room, broken only by the occasional alert from damaged ships. Kyle exhaled deeply, his hands trembling from the adrenaline. He had never imagined being in such a situation, yet somehow he had helped save an entire planet. Lyra looked at him with admiration and pride. "You were incredible," she said softly. "You saw what no one else could." Kale shook his head. "I just noticed patterns. That's all." "I didn't do it alone," Lyra smiled. "No, but you led, and leadership is about seeing what others cannot and acting when others hesitate. That is why I chose you." Queen Solara entered the control room shortly afterward, her presence commanding and calm. She surveyed the aftermath of the battle and then turned to Kale. "I must admit," she said, her voice tinged with awe, "I expected courage and skill from my daughter's choice, but not like this. You have shown something truly remarkable." Kale felt a surge of pride mixed with disbelief. He was just a human, an ordinary man from a distant world. Yet here he was, standing among alien royalty, having influenced the outcome of a battle that could have destroyed everything. The alien candidates who had once looked down on him were quiet now. Some avoided his gaze, unable to hide the grudging respect forming in their eyes. Others studied him carefully, perhaps realizing for the first time that human ingenuity could be as powerful as their physical or psychic abilities. That night, as the city of Veralia celebrated its survival, Kale sat with Lyra on the balcony of the palace. The sky was alive with fireworks shimmering in colors he had never seen before. Ships glided above and citizens cheered below. "You were amazing today," Lyra said, her eyes reflecting the lights. "I have never been prouder of my choice." Kale looked down at his hands, still shaking slightly. "I just did what I thought made sense. I wasn't strong or fast like them, I just noticed things." "That is exactly why you succeeded," Lyra replied. "They are powerful, but they are predictable. You are human, and humans can see possibilities others cannot. That is your strength." Kyle smiled faintly. "I never thought I'd be someone's father figure," he said, his voice almost shy. Lyra laughed softly. "Not yet. But this is only the beginning. One day you will guide me, teach me, and protect me, not with brute strength, but with wisdom, strategy, and courage. And you have already shown that humans can be extraordinary." As they watched the stars above, Kale realized that his life had changed forever. He had come to Veralia as an ordinary human, unsure of his place among beings far stronger and more advanced. Yet through observation, ingenuity, and courage, he had proven himself. The crisis had revealed something deeper. Humans were underestimated, even by the most powerful civilizations. Their creativity, adaptability, and ability to think differently could turn the tide in ways no one expected. Kale had seen it in himself, and now the rest of Veralia would see it too. Lyra rested her head on Kale's shoulder, her trust in him absolute. "We will face many challenges," she whispered, "and I know we can succeed together." Kale nodded, feeling a new sense of purpose. "Together," he repeated, "we will show them that humans are not weak." The stars twinkled above, silent witnesses to the beginning of a partnership that would change the fate of Veralia, and perhaps the universe itself. The aftermath of the raid had left Veralia shaken yet proud. The city had survived thanks to Kale's quick thinking and leadership. But not everyone in the court was ready to celebrate. Many alien nobles, still skeptical of humans, gathered in whispered councils questioning Princess Lyra's choice. "This human has disrupted tradition," one elder muttered, his shimmering scales reflecting the candlelight in the council chamber. "He was lucky once. Strength and skill are what matter in leadership, not observation and luck." Another, a silver-winged diplomat, shook her head. "He might have been clever this time, but can we truly trust a human to guide the princess in all matters of state? Our people expect power, not unpredictability." Lyra had expected this. She entered the chamber with Kale at her side, her steps confident and determined. The murmuring quieted as she approached the throne. The Queen had allowed this meeting to test Kale in a different way, through diplomacy and the delicate balance of court politics. "Kale," Lyra said softly, "this is your next challenge. The court will question you, try to unsettle you. You must remain calm, thoughtful, and wise." Kale swallowed. I will try." Lyra gave him a small, encouraging smile. "That is enough. Remember, human strength is different, but it is no less powerful." The council began their questions immediately. "Human," one elder said sharply. "You led us in battle once, but the protection of Veralia is more than combat. It is politics, diplomacy, and decision-making. Can you advise the princess in matters that affect millions?" Kale nodded slowly. "I understand that I am not one of you. I do not have your abilities or history. But I have learned to observe, to think carefully, and to act with reason. I may not always know the right answer immediately, but I will always seek it, and I will always consider the consequences of my actions." The chamber was tense. Some whispered doubt still, but others watched Kale with growing interest. A winged diplomat leaned forward. Can a human truly understand Virelia's customs and the ways of the court? She asked. Kale hesitated briefly, then said, Not perfectly, but I can learn. And I can listen. I do not need to know everything at once. I only need to understand the people I work with and the challenges we face together. Lyra's eyes shone with pride. He speaks the truth, she said. He has already proven himself in ways no one expected, and he will continue to learn as we all do. A few minutes passed in silence, the court evaluating every word, every gesture. Then a new challenge emerged. A minor dispute had arisen between two noble houses over trade routes and city resources. It was a delicate situation, one that could escalate into serious conflict. Kale stepped forward. We can resolve this, he said quietly. But we must first understand the needs of each house. Conflict happens when people feel unheard. If we listen carefully and find a compromise, we can prevent escalation. He turned to the council. Perhaps each side can present their concerns fully. Then we find solutions that meet the most important needs without harming anyone else. Logic and fairness are stronger than force in situations like this. Lyra watched as the court hesitated, unsure if a human could handle such matters. But Kale's calm demeanor and careful reasoning began to win them over. Slowly, the two houses presented their grievances. Kale asked questions, pointed out overlaps, and suggested compromises that the aliens had not considered. By the end of the session, an agreement had been reached. No force had been used. No threats had been necessary. Only understanding, observation, and reasoning had been employed, and the court had to admit it had worked. Some nobles remained unconvinced. A few whispered angrily that humans were still weak, that Kale's successes were accidents, but many more were impressed. They began to see what Lyra and Queen Solera had known all along. Human intelligence and empathy could match, and even exceed traditional power in the right circumstances. Kale's challenges continued over the next few days. He navigated disputes, assisted in organizing defenses, and learned about Virelia's complicated politics. At every turn, he relied not on strength or psychic power, but on careful observation, strategy, and understanding people's motivations. One evening, Kale and Lyra walked through the palace gardens discussing the day's events. The sky was painted with shades of violet and gold, and the soft hum of the city below created a peaceful background. You have surprised them all, Lyra said, her voice gentle. Even those who doubted you are beginning to respect you. Kyle shook his head. I still feel out of place. Sometimes I worry that I will fail, that they will see me as a fraud. Lyra smiled. You are not a fraud. You are human. And that is exactly why you succeed. Humans see possibilities where others see limits. You adapt. You think, you act. That is something they cannot do even with all their power. Kale laughed softly. I never thought being human would be a strength. It is, Lyra said firmly. And it will be more important than you know. The court may resist, but eventually they will learn that humans are not weak. They are unpredictable in ways that can change the outcome of any situation. The next day brought another challenge, an attempted sabotage in the palace. Some unknown entity had tampered with the energy supply, risking the collapse of the palace systems. The council was in panic. The alien candidates had no idea how to proceed, their power useless in such a subtle and technical problem. Kale examined the systems carefully, tracing lines of energy and checking for irregularities. He noticed a small anomaly in a rarely used conduit, a sign of tampering. With calm precision, he rerouted the energy, isolated the damaged sections, and prevented a catastrophic failure. Lyra watched, impressed as ever. You saved the palace, she said afterward. Not with power, but with observation and reasoning. Once again, you have proven your worth. Word of Kale's actions spread through the court. Even the most stubborn nobles could no longer deny his abilities. His human ingenuity, patience, and careful thinking were becoming a symbol of hope and progress in a world that had relied too long on traditional measures of strength. Yet some still resisted. A few whispered that humans were fragile, unpredictable in dangerous ways, and not fit to guide a princess. Kale faced their skepticism with quiet determination, knowing that respect was earned through consistent action, not words alone. Over time, his successes became undeniable. Disputes were resolved peacefully, sabotage prevented, and the court's efficiency improved under his guidance. Kale's human approach, careful observation, reasoning, empathy, and creativity had transformed the palace and the council. One evening, as the twin moons rose above Virelia's skyline, Kale and Lyra stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the city. The stars reflected in their eyes, and the soft hum of the city below filled the air. "You have done more than survive here," Lyra said softly. "You have thrived. You have proven that humans are not weak, even among the most powerful beings in the galaxy." Kyle looked at her, humbled. "I only did what I thought was right, and that is why it worked," Lyra replied. "Strength is not only about power. It is about wisdom, patience, and courage, and you have all three." Kyle smiled, feeling a deep sense of purpose. He had come to Virelia as a simple human, unsure of his place in a world of extraordinary beings. Now he was not just accepted, he was respected. His human abilities, once overlooked, had proven to be invaluable. As they watched the moons rise over the palace towers, Kale realized something profound. Humans had a kind of strength that the universe often underestimated. Adaptability, intelligence, and empathy could achieve what brute power never could. The court may have been divided at first, but Kale's persistence, courage, and careful thinking had begun to change hearts and minds. And Lyra, wise beyond her years, had trusted in what the others could not see, the true potential of a human. The palace was quiet now, but Kale knew this was only the beginning. Challenges would come, threats would rise, and doubts would persist. But he also knew that humans had a way of turning the impossible into the achievable, and he was ready to continue proving it. Lyra rested her hand on his arm, her trust and confidence in him unwavering. "Together," she said, "we will face whatever comes next." Kyle nodded. "Together," he echoed. The court might have been divided, but Kale's actions had already begun to unite them in a way they had never expected. The human spark, quiet but undeniable, had started to shine in the heart of Virelia. The morning sun rose over Virelia, painting the city in shades of gold and violet. The palace was alive with activity. Word had spread that Princess Lyra's chosen father figure, the human Kale, would be formally recognized today. Citizens, nobles, and advisors gathered to witness the ceremony. Some were curious, others skeptical, but all were eager to see if this human truly deserved the honor. Kyle stood beside Lyra in the grand hall. His brown hair was slightly messy, and his simple uniform looked out of place among the shimmering robes and armored suits of the alien nobility. He felt a twinge of nervousness but also determination. He had come a long way from being the uncertain human who had first entered the palace. Queen Solara entered the hall, her silver hair glinting like starlight. She carried herself with the same regal grace that had commanded respect for decades. Her violet eyes scanned the gathered crowd and then settled on Kale. She smiled softly. "Today," she began, her voice calm and powerful, "we acknowledge not only the choice of a princess but also the strength of character, intelligence, and courage. Kale, you have been tested, observed, and challenged in ways no human or alien has ever been. You have risen to every trial with wisdom, bravery, and perseverance." Kyle bowed deeply, feeling the weight of the moment. "I am honored, Your Majesty," he said humbly. "I am only here because Princess Lyra trusted me and because I tried to do what was right." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes shining with pride. "I chose Kale because I saw what no one else could see. Strength is not always visible. Power is not always obvious. But courage, intelligence, and determination, those are qualities that can change the fate of a world. Kale is human, yes, but he embodies all of these qualities." A hush fell over the hall. Even the most skeptical nobles could not deny the truth of her words. Kale had already demonstrated his abilities in ways that no alien could match, and now, before everyone, those accomplishments were being recognized. Queen Solara continued. This tradition of choosing a father figure was meant to test not only the princess's judgment, but also the true nature of strength. Kale, you have proven that the underestimated can become the most remarkable. You will serve as mentor, protector, and advisor to the princess, guiding her not with brute force but with wisdom and insight. Kyle felt a rush of pride and responsibility. He had never imagined that a human from Earth could achieve this. Yet here he was, recognized by the most powerful beings in Virelia for qualities that no alien strength or technology could replace. The court erupted in applause. Some still whispered doubts, but many stood, nodding in respect. The alien candidates who had once laughed at him now approached. their expressions a mixture of humility and admiration. One of them, the six-armed warrior who had lifted massive stones in the initial tests, stepped forward. "I misjudged you," he admitted. "You do not possess our strength, our abilities, yet you are more capable than any of us. I am honored to serve alongside you." Kale nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had never expected such acceptance, but he understood that respect was earned through action, not status or appearance. The ceremony continued, and Kale was formally recognized as Lyra's chosen father figure. He would guide her in matters of leadership, strategy, and decision-making. More importantly, he would serve as a symbol of humanity's potential, a reminder that even beings from a distant, weak planet could achieve greatness in a galaxy filled with powerful civilizations. After the ceremony, Kale walked through the palace gardens with Lyra. The city sprawled beneath them, alive with movement and color. Ships glided gracefully through the sky. Citizens moved with purpose, and the energy of Viralia seemed stronger than ever. "You have done more than I could have imagined," Lyra said softly. "The court may have been divided at first, but now they see what I have known all along. Humans are not weak." Kyle looked down at his hands, still slightly trembling from the excitement of the morning. "I only did what I thought was right. I never expected any of this," Lyra smiled. "That is exactly why it worked. Humans act differently because they are not bound by the same expectations as others. They see possibilities where others see limits. That is a rare gift," Kale nodded. "Then at what happens now? I am recognized, but the challenges of leadership are only beginning, aren't they?" "Yes," Lyra said, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. "But now you face them not as a stranger or a visitor, but as someone who belongs here. Together we will guide Viralia. Together we will face the threats that come from beyond our stars, and the challenges within our own walls. And together, we will show the universe that humans are capable of greatness." Kyle felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything he had ever known. He had been tested, doubted, and underestimated, yet he had risen to every challenge. And now he had a role not just as a protector or advisor, but as a symbol of the extraordinary potential of his species. That night, as the twin moons rose over the city, Kale and Lyra stood on the balcony, watching the stars shimmer in the dark expanse above. The hum of the city below was steady and calm, a sign of peace and stability restored. "Do you ever think about Earth?" Lyra asked softly. "About where you came from?" Kale smiled faintly. "Sometimes. It feels far away now, like a dream. But I carry it with me. Everything I learned there, everything that made me human, helped me get here. And I will continue to use it to guide you and protect this world." Lyra nodded, resting her hand lightly on his arm. "And I trust you, more than anyone else I have ever known. Humans are underestimated, Kale, but now, you have shown everyone what they can achieve." Kale looked at the city, the palace, and the stars above. He realized that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast and full of dangers, yet full of opportunities as well. Humans, with their unique abilities to think differently, adapt, and persevere, could face challenges that others might fail to overcome. "You know," Kale said softly, "I never thought being human would be a strength. I always thought we were ordinary, limited, fragile. But now I understand. Being human means seeing possibilities, taking risks, and never giving up. That can be more powerful than strength, speed, or technology." Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing in the moonlight. "And that is why I chose you. Not because you were the strongest, but because you are human, and humans can be extraordinary." The palace bells rang in the distance, marking the beginning of a new era. Kale had risen from an uncertain, weak human to a respected mentor, advisor, and symbol of hope. He had proven that courage, intelligence, and perseverance could surpass brute strength and raw power. As the city of Viralia settled into night, Kyle and Lyra stood side by side, looking toward the stars. The challenges ahead were unknown, the threats unpredictable. But one truth remained clear. Humans were not weak, and Kale's journey was proof of their extraordinary potential. And so, a human from a distant world had not only earned the respect of an alien civilization, but it also changed the way they would view humanity forever. The universe had learned something new. Sometimes the most unlikely beings are the ones who can inspire the greatest change. Kyle took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill his lungs. Together, he said softly. "We will face whatever comes next." Lyra nodded. "Together," she echoed, her voice filled with confidence and hope. The twin moons shone brightly above, and the stars beyond them sparkled as if acknowledging a new era. A human had triumphed, not through strength or power, but through courage, wisdom, and heart. The story of Kale and Princess Lyra was only beginning. But one thing was certain. The universe would never underestimate humans again.